Well, here comes a topic near and dear to my heart, the importance of failure. This is an attitude. If you start into fiction writing and think that it's going to be a smooth road and you're going to get raises and everything's going to go just hinky-dory and you're going to sell your first novel and you're going to go here and run from this profession. Just run. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't even pretend to work that way. Failure is a major part of this business at all levels, And I'll tell you, Chris and I have had some doozies of the failures, which is why one of the reasons we can sit here and talk in a well-rounded way about different aspects of this business is because we've been in lots of it, failed in lots of it, succeeded in lots of it, and been around for a long time making a living, which is also a form of success. All right, so the aspect of failure is there isn't a person on the planet that likes it. I'm no exception to that rule. We just don't like it. So let me talk about levels of failure in fiction writing. Okay? When I came into this business, 75, I started writing short stories and poetry. I was selling a lot of poetry. And what I was doing with my poetry at the time, which was accepted practice at the time, is I was sending off 3 poems to a market at a time with the self-addressed stamped envelope and all of that. And I always went to paying markets. I didn't believe this. What do I need a copy for? I was always going to paying markets of poetry, which means I was going to the top markets and the top literary markets that would pay and the top contests that would pay and that sort of stuff. And I was selling a lot of poetry and making a little bit of money, and which was startling for a poet. And what I would do is I would always send a poem along that I had just beat myself up over. I mean, I had rewritten it to death. I had polished it. I thought it was my best piece of work. I thought it had power. I thought, wow, they're going to just fall over dead. And then I sent a second poem along that was always just one of those, oh yeah, it's okay, it's a good poem. I worked on it a little bit. And then I sent a third poem along that was one of, and see, again, this is 75 to 82, or 75 to 77, 78 is when I quit mailing poetry. I still write it, but I quit mailing it. 77, 2 or 3 years there, and I didn't catch a clue for later. I should have. But my third poem was always something that I had just kind of cranked off really quick, hadn't bothered to rewrite, just thought it was fun, and sent it along anyhow. Because so I had the really worked on, really polished, the okay one that had some polish, and the really cranked off one that I didn't care about and thought it was stupid. Which one did I always sell? The cranked off one that was really stupid. Of course that's what I sold. Duh. I mean, my poetry that was in some of the top literary journals of its time is some of the dumbest damn stuff you'll ever read. I'm not kidding you. And because I never sold any of my good stuff that I had polished to death. And I wonder why. Oh yeah, because my voice came through the fun stuff, and the other stuff I had completely turned it into what was like every other poem on the planet. A bad Ferlinghetti or Brodigan ripoff is basically what it was, instead of a Bukowski, where his voice comes through. What I really ended up writing, and thanks to an English professor who tried to give me a clue, and again, I didn't catch it until I found Heinlein's Rules. I didn't catch this clue, but a wonderful poet who was a visiting professor at the University of Oregon, and they let me in her class even though I was in law school at the time, because I had sold so many poems and they literally couldn't turn me away. And she read some of my stuff, and a couple of them I was too busy over in law school, so I cranked her off a couple of poems, and she said I wrote like Bukowski. And I went and found a bunch of Bukowski. Charles Bukowski became one of my favorite writers and poets and novelists. But it didn't dawn on me that, maybe I should just let my voice out and just write me. No, I was still trying to polish everything. I was writing my 1 or 2 short stories a year and trying to polish, and I was believing in all the myths is what I was doing before I finally picked up on the fact that that's not the way professional writers do it. And so it was one of those aspects of my good stuff kept getting rejected. And from 75, I sold 2 short stories in 75 and then couldn't sell another thing. And both the short stories I wrote were like long poems. And then as I started to get longer and everything, my stories needed to have more substance. And of course, I was polishing them and killing them. And it just, there was just nothing. There was just nothing there. And so from 75 to 82, I collected, 6 or 7 rejections a year on my 2 stories before I get disgusted and not mail them out. And what do they say? They can't see my brilliance in my writing. Oh, these dumb editors, and I wouldn't mail them anymore and that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until I started really just doing a short story a week, putting all 5 senses in and going after it, that I started making sales. Does that mean the failure stopped? Oh, heavens, no. I mean, there'd be days. I mean, when you have 70-some short stories in the mail at one point, 70-some different short stories in the mail at one point, there were days I got 5 and 6 rejections in the same mail box. Okay, failure. 6 or 7 editors said, nope, no thanks, nope, sorry, alas, and all that sort of stuff that editors say. And form rejection. And it's like you become very hardened. Good training, because most writers stopped. For some reason, I understood the failure was only part of the process and kept going. And then I sold a novel fairly quickly in my career in 87. Didn't sell another one until 92. Okay. Tell me, that's a long 5 years there, gang. My wife and I started a publishing house that became unbelievably successful called Pulp House Publishing Incorporated. We were the 5th largest publisher of science fiction, fantasy, and horror in the nation for 4 straight years. And then we failed because of some bad decisions I made as the publisher. And basically, I think it was a little sabotage because Chris and I both wanted to make sure we were back in our writing. At the time, Chris was editing FNSF magazine, and it was at 90,000 subscribers. Right now, FNSF is at 9,000 subscribers. It was at 90,000 for the 6 years she edited it. And I'll tell you, that's a lot of people and a lot of success. And then she walked away from that. She quit. Said, I'm done. I'm going back to my writing. So failure, success, failure, success. Was Pulp House a success? Absolutely. We were in business for 9 years. But for 2 or 3 years afterwards, all I thought of it was a failure. We published 282 different books from the best names in the business. And I thought of it as a failure. I mean, we started it with $2,000. That's all we had. And I thought it was a failure. Of course it wasn't a failure. Looking back at it in hindsight, it was a complete success. And yet, because of how it ended, I thought it was a failure. Again, attitude, importance of failure. What we learned from Pulp House, what we've learned from rejection, what we've learned from having our careers go up and down and up and down. And if you don't think that's the case, let me give you my little teeny bit of evidence. It's a little tiny little survey I did. About 4 years ago, I was coming back into the business. I'd come through a nasty crash. I'd basically stopped and quit and went and played poker for a while. And I was coming back, and Chris forced me to go to Worldcon, World Science Fiction Convention. And so I was in Denver, and I decided, on a lark, to just start asking our best friends who'd been around as long as we had, how many crashes where they just didn't think they could sell another novel and thought their career was over had they had in their career. So the first person I asked was Walter John Williams. And without even hesitation, he said 4, and I'm coming out of one right now. And I'm like, okay. And so I asked everybody I could find, from Kevin J. Anderson to George Martin to all the people that had come in at the same approximate time that Chris and I had come in, and said, how many crashes have you had? 3 or 4. Considering, 25 to 35 years, 4 crashes, not bad. But there were 4 times in my career where I was just down, gone, didn't think I could sell another book, didn't think anybody wanted to buy anything from me, thought I was over, figured I could never write again. Complete failure. I came back. Same way. Chris has had 4. Same thing. Kevin Anderson's had 3. Rob Sawyer had 3 or 4. you don't notice it from the outside. As fans, you just think they just took some time off to write a book, and it looks like it's a nice, consistent climbing career. No. It doesn't work that way when you're on the typing side of the career. You have failures, you have crashes, you have expectations that don't come about, you have rejections, you have editors leave you, you have publishers kill your books. It goes on and on and on and on. Is that depressing? Yeah, maybe to some people who think everything should be perfect, but to those of us who are in publishing, it's just another day at the office. And if you go have a day job and you go into the office and you think everything's going to be smooth every day, no. And publishing is no different. Failure is part of it. The key is, as my wife says, it's not the fact that you get knocked to your back on the floor. It's how many times you pick yourself up. I think that's an old cliche, but Chris says that continuously. And she's exactly right. Whether it's a rejection that knocks you down, or whether it's a book publishing company dropping your book, or whether you're all excited and put up a new novel on all of the electronic sites as an indie, and 5 people buy it in the first month, you got to just pick yourself up and write the next book. Pick yourself up and write the next story. That's the key. And trust me, it's so much easier for me to just say this than do it. But at least I got to get it in your head that failure is a consistent part of this business, which makes the successes so much more fun. Okay? Onward with the Attitude Week.